I'm a member of Congress. I represent Florida's 25th Congressional District in South Florida. In April of 2022, former President Donald Trump spoke at a fundraising dinner for the Heritage Foundation, a right wing think tank in Washington. At dinner, he said this.
This is a great group, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detailed plans for exactly what our movement will do.
Last April, the Heritage Foundation, in partnership with hundreds of former Trump administration officials and loyalists, did just that. They call their work Project 2025, and they proudly posted much of it online. And no matter what Donald Trump says now, Project 2025 is his plan to further erode your freedoms, his plan to control your lives. Sadly, for too many Americans, including my fellow Floridians, Project 2025 is more than just a threat. Its most extreme Hick's most extreme policies are already a reality, starting with cruel abortion bans. Today, we are going to examine in detail how Trump's Project 2025 hurts everyday Americans and why we must do everything we can to stop it from becoming America's reality. To begin, I recognize my colleague, friend, and our leader, Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries.
Good afternoon. Thank you to our very distinguished co-chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as well as to our other co-chairs of Steering and Policy, Barbara Lee and Dan Kildee, for convening this all-important hearing of the Steering and Policy Committee. I want to thank all of my colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus for your presence and your leadership, in particular to Jared Huffman, who has helped to lead in such a phenomenal way the House Democratic Caucus Project 2025 Task Force. Also want to acknowledge all of the witnesses who are here today. And thank you for your presence and for your advocacy. We are inspired by your strength and grateful for your presence here today and your willingness to tell your stories to Congress and to the American people in such a compelling fashion. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear that we will find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues on any issue, whenever and wherever possible, in order to make life better for the American people, solve problems for hardworking American taxpayers, and deliver real results. At the same time, we've also made clear that we will push back against Republican extremism whenever necessary. And we have repeatedly been called upon to do just that. House Democrats will continue to put people over politics and to fight for lower costs, to grow the middle class, and to defend our freedom, particularly a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. But while House Democrats are putting people over politics, extreme MAGA Republicans are putting Trump's Project 2025 over the best interests of the American people. When it comes to exercising total control over the lives of the American people, extreme MAGA Republicans don't simply have concepts, they have a plan. It's a detailed plan. It's a 922-page plan, and it's called Project 2025. It's a dangerous, diabolical, and dastardly plan that, if implemented, would destroy our democracy as we know it. It would end Medicare as we know it. It would make overtime pay unlawful, and it would also mandate government surveillance of pregnancies and miscarriages. It is a dangerous, diabolical, and dastardly plan. We will expose Trump's Project 2025, and we will stop it. And that is what this hearing is all about. It's now my honor to yield to my distinguished colleague in leadership, Minority Whip Democratic Whip, Katherine Clark.
Thank you so much, Leader Jeffries. And thank you to our steering and policy co-chairs for bringing us together today. And we are grateful for our witnesses who have joined us for sharing your personal stories around the horrors of Project 2025. And I am glad that we have this opportunity to convene and underscore the gravity of Donald Trump's Project 2025, because this is not a standard conservative policy agenda. This document envisions a top to bottom overhaul of American life. And as the leader just laid out, a total control of your life by a future Trump administration, and it reserves its most vicious attacks for women and girls. We've already seen the vision imposed on the 22 states that have enacted Trump abortion bans. The results have been horrific. In South Carolina, Amari Marsh was arrested and charged for the crime of having a miscarriage. She spent 22 days in jail. She faced 20 years in prison until a grand jury of her peers set her free. In Georgia, Amber Thurman and Candy Miller needlessly lost their lives because their doctors feared going to prison themselves if they administered the care their patients needed. And these are just a few of the women who have been affected. Project 2025 would take these Trump abortion bans nationwide with no exceptions for rape, incest, or even the survival of a patient. It would remove birth control options from insurance coverage. It would impose what it describes as abortion surveillance, monitoring women when they get pregnant. It would prosecute your pharmacist for mailing abortion medication. It would jail your ER doctor for saving the life of a pregnant woman. It would use every tool at its disposal to enforce state mandated pregnancy. And then, in a triumph of cruelty, it would make it harder to get by as a parent. It proposes shutting down Head Start, defunding public schools, hiking taxes on the middle class, weakening protections for pregnant students and nursing moms. The MAGA playbook is as simple as it is devastating. Less freedom for you, more control for them. Less money in your pocket, more tax breaks for the rich friends. They have done us one favor to the American people. They've warned us. So when they tell us that Donald Trump's second term will be even worse than his first, we need to believe them. And that is why I am so grateful to be part of this hearing. And I'm so grateful to the work of my colleague, who I will yield to, Jared Huffman, for his work exposing Trump's Project 25.
Thank you, Madam Whip. Trump's Project 2025 is not some fresh set of ideas. It's a culmination of years of work by extreme MAGA Republicans. When he was president, Donald Trump handpicked 3 extreme Supreme Court justices, the same justices who overturned Roe versus Wade. And this summer, those Trump appointed justices gave Trump a huge gift: absolute immunity from criminal charges. Now think about that. Donald Trump back in the White House with a blank check to do whatever he wants without ever facing criminal prosecution. What will Trump do with all of that power? Now we know, because his loyalists wrote it down. It's called Project 2025. Let's take a look at how it came together and who was involved. Project 2025 is MAGA's plan to, quote, institutionalize Trumpism in order to take control of every aspect of Americans' lives. It has 4 pillars, only one of which has been fully disclosed. That's Pillar 1, the 922-page manifesto laying out their plans to, and this is their words, not ours, take the reins of government. Pillar 2 is a personnel database like LinkedIn for MAGA. It's all about repopulating the federal workforce with Trump loyalists after they've purged tens of thousands of professional civil servants. Pillar 3 is the creation of the Presidential Administration Academy.
Today we're going to talk to you about the art of professionalism.
Like extreme MAGA Republican basic training taught by some of Trump's closest advisors.
Senior advisor to the president.
Assistant press secretary.
And finally, Pillar 4, a secret 180-day plan to implement these radical policies agency by agency from the day Trump takes the oath of office. The Republicans know how unpopular these plans are, so they're doing everything they can to try and distance themselves from them. But the American people are not stupid. Extreme MAGA Republican members of Congress regularly appear on the radio show hosted by Heritage Foundation President and Project 2025 Mastermind Kevin Roberts.
We've become friends, and he's also a longtime friend of Heritage. Scott Perry, thanks for making time.
Well, I am honored, and I'm thrilled to be on the Dr. President Kevin Roberts show. It's awesome.
Well, Kevin, thank you, and congratulations on your new position here at Heritage. They couldn't have found a better man.
They even quote him on the House floor.
I've never done this on the House floor before, but I'm going to read what someone else wrote about this bill. And this is from Kevin Roberts with Heritage Foundation. I want to commend them for what they said.
We're delighted to be joined on this occasion by Acting Director Ross Vogt, who has really done a fantastic job.
And perhaps most damning, the leader of this year's official Republican Party platform is one of the lead authors of Project 2025.
The campaign selected me to be the platform because of their views on my policy ideas, and they're not running.
Here he is, captured in an undercover video.
I think you have to rehabilitate Christian nationalism.
Bragging about Trump's support.
He's been at our organization. He's raised money for our organization. He's blessed it from the, I remember walking into our last day in office and told him what I was going to do. So he's very supportive of what we do. There's no think tank, no policy organization, no battle plan creator other than us for the worldview that I think Donald Trump has and that JD has.
All in all, 31 of the 38 authors of Project 2025, 81%, were Trump officials.
I, Neil M. Gorsuch,
Brett M. Kavanaugh,
Amy Coney Barrett, do solemnly swear.
And with Trump's hand-picked Supreme Court's justices' radical absolute immunity decision.
We start with a monumental Supreme Court decision on the power of the presidency.
The highest court in the land handed future presidents a, quote, loaded weapon.
He will have the power to make Project 2025 a reality. So Project 2025 is Trump's manifesto to turn our federal government into a tool of MAGA extremism. And the first step is to eliminate checks on presidential power, anything and anyone who could stand in Trump's way, firing tens of thousands of career civil servants and then replacing them with MAGA loyalists, directing the FBI, the Justice Department, and the IRS to investigate Trump's perceived enemies, even deploying active duty military on our streets. It's downright scary. More than 140 former Trump officials contributed to Trump's Project 2025. Extremists like Stephen Miller and sycophants like Mark Meadows. And while most of the Trump Project 2025 blueprint is online and you can read it, they've kept a critical piece hidden from the public eye. The architects of Trump's Project 2025 acknowledge they have a secret 180-day playbook of early actions for Trump to swiftly enact their extreme agenda. They call it their fourth pillar. Why publish 922 pages of breathtakingly extreme proposals, but keep the implementation plans secret? We can only assume that Project 2025's secret fourth pillar for the first days and weeks of a second Trump presidency is even more alarming than the parts of Trump's Project 2025 that they were willing to publish. That should scare every American because the published parts of Trump's Project 2025 are frightening enough, beginning with criminalizing abortion nationwide with no exceptions. At this time, I want to yield to my friend from Massachusetts, a critical partner on our Stop Project 2025 task force, Representative Ayanna Pressley.
For half a century, Roe v. Wade was the law of the land. Roe protected the right of people in this country to make their own reproductive health care decisions, including the right to get an abortion. Abortion care is routine medical care. But then Donald J. Trump became president. He campaigned on banning abortion care and even called to punish women for having abortions. When Donald J. Trump took office, he appointed 3 extreme right wing justices to the Supreme Court. And in June of 2022, just as Donald J. Trump promised they would, those 3 justices banded together with other Republican appointed justices and overturned Roe. They gave a green light for Republicans to criminalize abortion, to criminalize doctors and nurses in states across the country. Today, 1 in 3 women in America lives under a Trump abortion ban. The consequences are being felt by people across this country who are denied the care they need and by providers who can no longer care for their patients. And we will hear from some of them today. Donald J. Trump's campaign to end Roe was a devastating, decisive step in a decades-long Republican effort to make it impossible for women to get reproductive health care. And while Republicans are now trying to run away from the consequences of their extreme agenda, they were jubilant the day that Roe was overturned and even promised to take it much further.
There's no right to abortion in the Constitution, and thankfully the Supreme Court finally said that decisively. Thanks be to God.
Mr. Speaker, let me first say God bless the United States Supreme Court. And God bless President Trump for the people he selected for our highest court.
First, thank you to the Supreme Court for removing the curse of abortion.
I am so incredibly grateful and gratified that the Supreme Court has finally overturned Roe versus Wade.
Today's historic Supreme Court decision is a victory for the sanctity of life.
But the work just begins now to go and protect life even more, because the Supreme Court's decision overturning Roe v. Wade, correcting that flawed decision, finally allows states and Congress to protect life in ways that we never were able to for the last 50 years.
Republicans will not stop until abortion is criminalized nationwide. After all, just 6 pages into the more than 900 pages of Trump's Project 2025, it says, quote, "The Dobbs decision is just the beginning," unquote. And we just saw how they celebrated the Dobbs decision. I yield to my friend from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon.
Thank you. The consequences of Trump abortion bans across the country have been devastating. In December, ABC News gathered 18 women who had nearly died due to the laws that have taken effect since Roe v. Wade was overturned. Each one is uniquely heartbreaking. Here are just 3.
I found out at 23 weeks that she wasn't going to survive.
I was supposed to have a termination for medical reasons, like an induction of labor in the hospital, and when Roe versus Wade was overturned, it was canceled. The Committee of Ethics decided that it wasn't a threat to my life, and so I was not able to get the termination. Carrying her to term was absolutely horrible. I had to go out in public and have people ask me how far along I was. what the gender of my baby is, and she ended up living for 44 hours. Those 2 days were absolutely horrible because there was nothing that I could do to protect her, to make her more comfortable. My milk came in the day after she passed, and I had no baby to feed. The most painful reminder that my baby was gone. I struggle with anxiety every single day now. My body is constantly in fight or flight mode. After watching a piece of my heart die, I'm not me anymore.
Within hours, I was showing all signs of sepsis. The doctors needed to start inducing me immediately. However, they were unable to because of Texas abortion laws.
Our doctor, our nurses were crying at my bedside, wishing they could do something with blank stares on their faces because they literally couldn't do anything until the blood work showed that I was dying. She's literally dying inside of me as I lay on the bed going septic.
All I'm thinking is, well, I'm at the hospital, right? I'm okay. I won't die because I'm at the hospital. And I looked at my husband, and that was when reality hit me, because he's looking at me and he's saying, no, babe. No, I don't think you're understanding what the doctor is saying.
And what would my Republican colleagues say to these women? Hear them in their own words.
I would like to state for the record, abortion is not health care in any way. Abortion is not health care. It is murder.
Yesterday, I introduced the Abortion is Not Healthcare Act.
Abortion is not health care. It is not health care.
And that's what they would say to our first witness, Gracie Ladd. Gracie's an oncology nurse from Waukesha, Wisconsin. Like far too many women in this country, Gracie has her own harrowing story, the story of being denied the care she needed. Gracie and her husband were expecting a son. They'd chosen a name, Connor, and they were ready to welcome Connor into this world. That was until an ultrasound revealed the worst news imaginable for expecting parents. Connor was developing defect after defect. He would die within minutes of being born. Gracie and her husband knew that terminating the pregnancy for medical reasons would be the right choice. But extreme MAGA Republicans in Wisconsin said otherwise. They passed cruel laws that deny care and force women to consider other, quote, unquote, options. What options exactly? It wasn't Gracie's choice that her pregnancy was incompatible with life. She wanted to carry Connor to term. She wanted her son. But circumstances beyond her control made it clear that the most loving and compassionate decision was to terminate the pregnancy. And because of the Trump abortion ban in her home state, Gracie and her husband were forced to travel to Illinois to get the care that she needed. Trump abortion bans make it harder for every woman to get necessary care. And if Trump and his allies get their way and enact Project 2025, they would expand these medieval policies across the country. Women like Gracie would be forced to carry non-viable pregnancies to term. That's cruel. Gracie, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your courage. You are recognized.
Thank you, Representative Scanlon. This wasn't part of my remarks, but is this on? Thank you for saying his. The light is on. Okay. Thank you for saying his name. It was very important. So like she said, my name is Gracie Ladd, and I'm here to tell you my abortion story. After the rights of Roe versus Wade were taken away, people can't stop debating what rights women should have when it comes to their own bodies. I'm here to tell you about the side of abortion that isn't being talked about. People like me and the mothers who are the human fallout of this debate. Where we once had agency, now our choices are being made for us by the government. And the result is that we can't get the care that we need. In January of this year, my husband and I walked into our anatomy scan for our son. I was about 18, 20 weeks. This scan is done to make sure that the baby is developing properly. They look over all of the body parts and make sure that everything is looking normal and developing as it should. We had just picked the name, Connor, and he was waving to us on the screen. And we were so excited. We were halfway to meeting our little boy until we weren't. My doctor pulled me and my husband into a separate room to tell us what she had seen. I got stuck on the phrase that she used, incompatible with life, which is a phrase that I hear every day. Connor had no bladder. He had kidneys that did not function, so I was rapidly losing the amniotic fluid that the kidneys help to circulate throughout the uterus. And he had 4 separate heart defects. There were no options for him surgically when he was born. And they told me that if he made it full term, which was a very big if, he would likely survive only minutes and he would know only suffering. They recommended termination. We did a second, more in-depth ultrasound the next day with the maternal fetal medicine doctor just to confirm the results. And he did confirm. We were gutted. We knew that we did not want suffering to be the only thing that Connor knew in this life, and so termination was going to be our choice. Women who find themselves in this position are rarely discussed when it comes to abortion. This makes me deeply angry. I'm angry because there was only one hospital in Wisconsin that would even do this procedure for us. Only one that decided it would have been okay to give Connor the grace of a painless death and a life that knew only love. I'm angry because this hospital would force me to endure another unnecessary ultrasound where I would have to watch my baby, seemingly happy and content, in my womb, knowing that he would never be able to survive on the outside. I'm angry because this hospital would also require me to go through counseling 24 hours before an abortion procedure, as if any of the options would make a difference in my son's outcome. I'm angry because that in my state, there's no guarantee that I wouldn't be labeled a murderer for making the compassionate choice for my son. I'm angry that I had to drive to Chicago to receive abortion care 2 days in a row with a medical team I had never met, a medical team I did not feel comfortable with. And the procedure takes 2 days and it is awful and traumatic, and we should be able to do that with the healthcare providers that we trust and that we know. I'm angry that although I was privileged enough to be able to take time off of work, I could find childcare for my living son, and I could afford to travel to Chicago 2 days in a row. Not all women can. And what are their options? What do they do in this situation then? But mostly, I'm angry that the people who were not even in that ultrasound room with me on the day that I received the worst news of my life want to try to tell me what I can and cannot do when it comes to the medical choice for my body and my son. And today I'm here to share that I'm angry because if Republicans get their way and pass Project 2025, the national abortion ban, I wouldn't have even had the freedom to leave my state for the health care that I deserved and that it is my right to receive. Now, more than ever, we need to protect that right to choose. We need to protect women facing a decision that is between them and their healthcare provider. Please remember my son Connor. Remember his story and that abortion care is an essential component of prenatal care for all American women. Thank you.
Thank you, Gracie. Thank you for your courage, for sharing your story, for sharing Connor's story. I look forward to the day when people do not have to publicly uplift their trauma in order to compel action. And I'm deeply sorry for your loss. I'm devastated that your family and families across this nation have borne the burden of Trump's abortion bans. No one in America should go through what you went through. You should be able to get the safe and necessary medical care you need in your own community. We must restore reproductive freedom so what happened to you never, ever happens again. Women have already lost their lives. It is heartbreaking. The last few days, I've been thinking of one woman, Amber Nicole Thurman, a 28-year-old mom from Georgia. Amber was a dedicated mom to her 6-year-old son. Every chance she got, she took her son to petting zoos, to pop-up museums, and on planned trips like one to a Florida beach. The talks I have with my son are everything, she posted on social media. She loved her family deeply. Trump appointed justices overturned Roe v. Wade on June 24, 2022. Georgia began enforcing its abortion ban that very same day. In August, Amber had a medication abortion in another state. She then went back home to Georgia. Abortion pills are very safe. On rare occasions, they require a follow-up surgical abortion if the body has not expelled the tissue fully. That is what happened in Amber's case. She developed an infection, one that could have easily been treated with a routine procedure called a D&C. But under Georgia's abortion ban, a doctor performing that procedure could go to prison for 10 years. So when Amber shows up at the hospital, the question on doctors' minds isn't just how they can best care for Amber, it's also what they have to do to comply with Georgia's draconian law and to stay out of jail. That's never a choice that doctors should be faced with, but that's exactly what happened in the case of Amber Thurman. On August 18, Amber's infection reaches a boiling point. She is vomiting blood. Amber arrives at Piedmont Henry Hospital in the city of Stockbridge at 6:51 p.m. She suffers all night. She suffers all night. By 5:14 a.m., her vitals are dire, and Amber runs the risk of bleeding out. At 6:45 a.m., 12 hours from when she first arrived at the hospital, Amber is moved to the ICU. Her doctors look on as her condition worsens. They've now given her 5 liters of IV fluid to no avail. 7:14 a.m. Amber's doctors discuss initiating a D&C, the routine procedure to treat infection like hers. Nothing happens. At noon, now 5 hours after Amber was moved to the ICU, a specialist reports that her condition is deteriorating. We are now 17 hours from when she was first admitted. 2 p.m. Amber is wheeled into the operating room as her vitals crash and blood pressure bottoms out. Her mother is right there with her. As she heads into surgery, Amber turns to her and says, "Promise me you'll take care of my son." That afternoon, Amber dies on the operating table. Amber should be alive today. Every single woman who has died because of Trump abortion bans should be alive today. But what do we have instead? No compassion, no care, and no justice. That's not the America we should be. I yield to my friend from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Thank you, Congresswoman Presley, and thank you for compassionately sharing Amber's story. Sadly, Amber Thurman was not alone in living under an abortion ban. In my home state of Florida, abortion is banned after 6 weeks, when many women don't even know they're pregnant. All told, at least 1/3 of all American women of reproductive age live under a Republican abortion ban. That's around 25 million women who cannot get the health care they need. And behind each of those bans is a real person. Gracie in Wisconsin, Amber in Georgia, and a Central Florida woman I met named Deborah. When she was 23 weeks pregnant, Deborah got the news every future parent dreads. Her baby's kidneys never developed. Doctors told her that not only would her baby not survive, but her own health was in danger. Because of a Trump abortion ban, Deborah couldn't get the care she needed in Florida, and she couldn't afford to travel hundreds of miles to get it. She had no choice but to carry her son Milo to term, only to watch him die in her arms 2 hours later. As we heard earlier, abortion bans put providers in an impossible situation, stopping them from caring for patients the way they know they should. But these same providers remain a compassionate source of support for women who desperately need their help. One of those providers is here with us today. Suki is an ultrasound tech at a clinic in Georgia, where Republicans have banned abortion, as you've heard, after 6 weeks. Suki knows firsthand the impact of Trump abortion bans. She is on the front lines of these attacks on care. As an ultrasound tech, Suki has held the hands of so many women who have come to her clinic to get the care they need. And having given birth to 3 children, Suki, I can tell you I know how much I appreciated and respected my own ultrasound tech. I have twins, and I had a lot of ultrasounds throughout my pregnancy. Since Georgia banned abortion, Suki's had to take on the role of advocate too. If an ultrasound reveals the worst, that a pregnancy won't be viable or that the mother's health could be in jeopardy, her clinic can do little, if anything. Suki wants better for her patients. That's why she spends her time organizing for reproductive freedom in Georgia. Suki, you are recognized, and thank you for being here.
My name is Sakari. Most folks call me Suki. I have been an ultrasound tech for the past 20 years, sharing some of the most vulnerable, joyful, and also harrowing moments of people's lives. I have worked in multiple hospitals, OBGYN offices, and private practice. It wasn't until I started working in an abortion clinic that I truly found my community. I wake up every day loving what I do, knowing I make a difference each and every day for the people to whom I give care. I am grateful and blessed to help the folks that come into my ultrasound room. I am a person of faith, and my faith teaches me to love. I pray every day that I can be a light for every person that comes into my office. I hope that at the end of my day, someone will be encouraged by the words I speak to them and that they will feel some joy radiating off of me, especially as they face choices that can feel too big for them to carry on their own. I have worn many hats for my patients, serving as a friend, a sister, a parent, and spiritual advisor to them. I have held their hands and been a shoulder to cry on as they receive devastating and life changing news. But after the fall of Roe, I have been forced to add organizer and fundraiser to that list as women have been forced to flee Georgia to receive health care they need. In the time before the rights of Roe were taken away, Amber Nicole Thurman and Candy Miller are women that could have been my patients. But because of Georgia's abortion ban, they were forced to try to seek care on their own. Candy shouldn't have been faced with the thought of being prosecuted while making the decision that was best for her and her family, a choice that would allow her to be a mother to her children. Amber's death hit me hard as she was a part of my community, a community that I've called home for 22 years. She died in a hospital where I've worked and a place where I watched my grandson be born. If these bans hadn't been put in place, I might have been the person to perform Amber or Candy's ultrasound. I might have been able to make them smile and give them a hug or listen to them say thank you. How many more Black women have to die or have died as a result of abortion bans? I'm tired of seeing women being forced to travel to state out of state to have an abortion. I'm tired of wiping away tears after being forced to tell women they're too far under Georgia's abortion ban. These women deserve to have autonomy over their bodies to make the decisions that are best for them. Since the fall of Roe, I have been faced with anxiety. My anxiety comes from patients I scan with potential life threatening conditions like ectopic pregnancies. These patients used to be sent to the hospital to have a procedure that, before the rights of Roe were taken away, would have been simple. Now I have to give my patients information to advocate for themselves to not be turned away or pushed to the side. Now I will have added anxiety after the deaths of Amber and Candy. If I scan a patient with retained tissue and they need to be seen in the hospital, will they get the care they need or will they die? There was a time that I didn't have to worry. I question the folks that treat conditions like ectopic pregnancies as if they aren't urgent or life threatening. I question the lawmakers that don't allow doctors to fully take care of their patients without fear. I question why a woman has to write so hard for health care and why the Black mortality rate is so high. And I question anyone who sees what's happened in my home state of Georgia and believes that is a model to expand nationwide in a total ban on abortion. We now know with certainty that if the policies outlined in Project 2025 are put in place, more women, not just in Georgia, but across the country, will die. Today, I use my voice on the Hill as a shining light for the women that will receive care and for the ones that will be denied care. I want to tell you before I leave that it is difficult to turn folks away at the clinic where I work, but we continue to help as many folks we can each day. In the face of threats that abortion bans and Project 2025 pose, this Maya Angelou verse of Still I Rise gives me the courage to continue what I do. Just like moons and like suns with certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I rise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm Congresswoman Diana DeGette from Colorado, and I'm the co-chair of the Pro-Choice Caucus. And I have to say, when all of us have to sit here and hear this, it makes us so grateful to both of you for your courage. And it also makes us so sick that you have to come here and talk about these things, Gracie, particularly the hardest thing you and your family ever went through, that you had the courage to come here and tell us that today. On behalf of Connor, on behalf of your family, thank you. It's not easy and it's going to be so impactful. And Suki, thank you for coming to talk to us about how you didn't just go along with this, how you've been empowered to help your patients. I just found out that my daughter is pregnant with her second baby, and I wish that you were her technician because you could really help her. And then I think about Amber and Candy, and I think to myself, how many more are there? We don't even know their names. We speak their names. And then I think to myself, this is the United States of America. What is the matter with us as a country that we have allowed this to happen? Suki, you said that Georgia's being used as a model to expand this with Project 2025, and you are correct. I want to talk for a minute about exactly what Project 2025 will do nationwide for all women in this country, all people in this country. Instead of fixing the crisis that they caused with Dobbs, the Republicans, led by Donald Trump, are doubling down on it. You saw this in the wonderful videotape that Mr. Huffman showed, where Steve Scalise, who's the Republican leader, said that this is only a start, and he means it. 186 Congress people who serve in Congress right now have co sponsored legislation already in Congress that says that the moment a sperm and an egg meet, that is a person. And what that means is all abortions would be banned, all abortions, no exceptions, life, incest, health, anything from inception. It would mean IVF would be banned. It would mean that many common forms of birth control would be banned. And that's what we see in Project 2025. Project 2025 calls for enforcing a backdoor nationwide abortion ban without the consent of Congress. So Congress wouldn't even have to do it. It would baselessly revoke the FDA's 24-year approval of abortion medication, which would effectively ban an essential method of birth control, and it would end federal protections for emergency abortion care, like both of you are talking about. But Project 2025 doesn't stop there. If the Republicans are given power, it would then undermine insurance coverage for emergency contraception and end no cost birth control coverage, which would roll back decades of progress, increasing birth control's affordability and accessibility. Now, all of us know nearly every single American has used some form of birth control in their lifetime, including 99% of sexually active women. And so when Donald Trump says, don't worry, he's going to take care of women, what he means, he's going to take away 99% of our birth control. That's the America he wants us to live in. Project 2025 would encourage and even codify violations of patient privacy. This would include punishing states where abortion is legal if they do not report on the out of state patients who fled there seeking care. Can you imagine that? And it would include weaponizing the Department of Health and Human Services to increase data collection on pregnant women in America, including where they live, what state of pregnancy, and how and why their pregnancy was terminated. Look, it's impossible to overstate this crisis. It's a question of freedom versus control. While we are fighting to restore reproductive freedom for every single American, Project 2025 is a dangerous exercise in giving Republican politicians the tools to monitor and control over American people's bodies, and we must reject it. With that, I'm happy to recognize my co-chair of the Pro-Choice Caucus, Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for your bravery, your courage, and for being here. For me, and tens of millions of other people, making a personal decision to have an abortion isn't, as you both just said, it's not theoretical, it's our truth. Now, I never spoke about this publicly because, as my mother told me, this is before Roe. This is a personal decision. It's a healthcare decision between us, and it's no one's business, the way it should be. But after the Texas abortion restrictions came down, I decided to go public so that people would know that there are members of Congress who see them, who hear them, and are fighting for their reproductive freedom. I grew up attending a Catholic school in El Paso, Texas, and with non-existent sex education. I honestly wasn't sure how you got pregnant. Most of what I learned about sex and relationships was from pages of magazines like True Story and hearsay from my peers. I lived in an extended family household, and my wonderful parents and grandparents, they wanted me to make straight A's, which I did, practice the piano day and night, which I did, and of course, stay away from boys, which I did, I thought. When I had just turned 16 after we had moved to California, I missed my period. I was confused, afraid, and unsure, not knowing if I was pregnant or not. I did not know what to do. My mother noticed that I became introverted and quiet, so she asked me what was going on with me. At that point, I told her everything. I told her that I could be pregnant, but I really just didn't know. She responded with love and compassion and took me to the doctor who confirmed I was pregnant. My mother asked me if I wanted to get an abortion. She didn't demand or force me, but understood that this was my personal decision, one that I needed to make. Once I made my decision, one of my mother's best friends helped me access the abortion that I could not get in California, where it was still illegal. Mind you, again, this was before Roe, so it was illegal everywhere. But when my mother told her friend what was going on, who was a Latina woman in El Paso, she sent me there to El Paso, Texas, where I was born. My mother's friend said she knew a good and competent and compassionate doctor who had a back alley in Juarez. And her friend, who just passed away a couple of years ago, was kind and loving, and she took me to Juarez, Mexico to have a DNC abortion procedure. Now, I was afraid because I knew I could die. I knew I could be arrested because abortions were illegal, just not like now, in 22 states. Project 2025 will criminalize abortions nationwide. Now, I was one of the lucky ones. A lot of women and girls in my generation didn't make it. They died from unsafe abortions. In the 1960s, unsafe abortions were the primary killer of African American women and girls. But now politicians aren't just talking about taking us back to those bad old days. They are actually now talking about also how they want to punish people who get abortions.
Do you believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
If Donald Trump has his way, a 16-year-old person like me, like so many today, wouldn't have the freedom to make their own decisions. And if they tried, the government would try to find a way and would find a way to punish them. So, yes, I say ban off our bodies. Ban off our bodies. We cannot and we must not go back. I yield now to my colleague from Wisconsin, Mr. Pocan.
Thank you, Barbara. Trump's Project 2025 isn't just a war on women, it's a war on every American worker and the middle class. When he was president, Donald Trump put billionaires over the American people. He passed a tax scam that cut taxes for the top 1% while doing next to nothing for hardworking families. He pushed funding cuts that would have slashed services that middle class families depend on. And he tried time and time again to repeal the Affordable Care Act and succeeded in destabilizing insurance markets and hiking up costs for working families. But thanks to the sheer incompetence of the Republicans and the determined pushback of House Democrats, the courts, and everyday Americans, Trump was not able to get his way on every issue. Now he's back for more, and he wants to go further. Trump's Project 2025 is his plan to eliminate overtime pay for America's workers, raise taxes and costs on middle-class families, and tell us how to live our lives. And as always with Trump, that's something that starts with targeting Americans' affordable health care. I yield to my friend from California, Dr. Ruiz.
Thank you, Mark. As an emergency medicine physician, I know firsthand how important it is that the communities I serve have access to quality, affordable health care. That's why it's so concerning that Trump's Project 2025 takes direct aim at healthcare for tens of millions of Americans. But this isn't the first time the extreme House Republicans have targeted our care. It's the same old story. The GOP is obsessed with repealing the Affordable Care Act.
We promised that we would repeal and replace Obamacare. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Well, this has been a very productive week in the House. as we continue our efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare.
After this morning, the resolve of our conference to repeal Obamacare and replace it has never been stronger.
It's why I and many of my colleagues did as we promised and voted to repeal this failed law.
We will be able to immediately repeal and replace Obamacare. Have to do it.
That begins with immediately repealing and replacing the disaster known as Obamacare.
So I'd like to terminate Obamacare.
Tonight, I am also calling on this Congress to repeal and replace Obamacare.
So many of you heard 2 weeks ago when Donald Trump said he has a concept of a plan about health care. I can tell you what that plan is. It's the only plan he and his allies have had for the last decade, getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. Project 2025 is Trump's latest plan to repeal the ACA and take affordable coverage away from more than 21 million Americans, including over 300,000 people in my district alone. It would add lifetime caps on Medicaid, threatening health care for another 18 million people. And it would let insurance companies once again discriminate against people with pre existing conditions, the same patients and now constituents that I serve. The only people who would benefit from Trump's Project 2025 are the billionaires and big corporations who will be able to squeeze even greater profits out of patients. So, with that, I yield to my colleague from Illinois, Miss Underwood.
As one of the only nurses in Congress, to me, Project 2025's direct attacks on our healthcare are some of the most alarming parts of this 920 plus page document. This plan is extreme in the truest sense of the word. It calls to eliminate protections for people with pre existing conditions like myself, proposes new taxes on people who get their health coverage from work, and would cause the cost of prescription drugs to skyrocket. To put it simply, Donald Trump's Project 2025 will make more Americans sick and leave them without the coverage they need to take care of themselves and their families. Few people understand these threats better than our providers, and I'm so pleased to be joined today by a fellow registered nurse, Vicki Gonzalez. Vicki has been an RN since 1986, and for the past 20 years, she has worked as a wound and ostomy nurse at one of our nation's largest hospitals, Jackson Memorial in Miami. Vicki has seen firsthand how the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid have brought high-quality, affordable care to so many people who previously couldn't afford to go to the doctor and instead ended up deathly sick in the emergency room. And Vicki knows how dire it would be for these people to once again have to choose between putting food on the table and getting the care that they need. Vicki, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, committee, and thank you for the invite. My name is Vicki Gonzalez, and I've been a registered nurse for almost 40 years, and at Jackson Memorial Hospital for 27 of those. I am also president of my union, SEIU 1991. I speak to you today on behalf of millions of nurses across our country who know how important it is for every person in our nation to have quality, affordable health care, and how attacks on the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid, like outlined in Project 2025, are attacks on the physical and financial health of our middle class. When people think of Miami, they often think of the glamour we see on TV, and certainly there is that. But Miami is a beautiful melting pot of cultures filled with middle class and lower middle class families who want to build better lives for their children and live the American dream. My family is among those. They came here from Cuba in the 1950s, and later I came along. I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do after high school, but when a childhood friend mentioned he was going into a nursing program. I thought that sounded like a great career, and it has been. Upon graduation, all I wanted to do was work at Jackson Memorial Hospital. It is one of the largest public hospitals in this country, providing state-of-the-art care as a level 1 trauma center. We are also one of the top hospitals for organ transplants and cancer treatments. When no other hospital can fix you, Jackson can. Because patients come to us with serious injuries that other hospitals cannot handle, we see every day how just one accident can completely alter someone's life. Imagine you're having a barbecue with family and friends. You're laughing and joking, but then suddenly something goes wrong. The grill ignites and a fire breaks out. You are rushed to us covered in third-degree burns, and your life hangs in the balance. We stabilize you, but the pain is excruciating. You will spend weeks in our hospital covered in high-tech bandages. You feel very lucky to be alive and finally get to go home to your family. But the pain and the healing will continue at home for months, maybe years. Now imagine that as you struggle through recovery, a bill comes, then another and another. Soon you are drowning in medical debt that you have no hope of paying. How can you heal with a constant stress of financial ruin hanging over you? How can you recover physically when you know your family will never recover financially? Healthcare costs in the United States are some of the highest in the world, which is why having affordable health insurance isn't just important, it's essential. The Affordable Care Act provides that coverage to millions. This year, a record-breaking 21 million Americans signed up for insurance through the ACA marketplace. Now families who don't have or lose access to health insurance through their employer can get the care they need. The middle class cannot grow without health care and the ACA. That helps families build the better lives they dream of. But the ACA isn't just helping those who don't have access to affordable insurance before. It also provides important provisions that protect all of us. Project 2025's blueprint to weaken the ACA until it crumbles would take us backwards to a time of dollar limits on medical expenses and when having a condition as common as asthma meant you could be denied care. We cannot go back. As a nurse, I know just how important it is for patients with chronic conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure to have access to care and preventive treatments. Without that, a small complication can quickly escalate. Not only is that harmful to my patients, sometimes with devastating consequences, but it costs more on the back end to treat these conditions once they've escalated. Access to affordable health insurance and preventive care is also essential to addressing racial and ethnic health disparities, which improve our nation's overall health and economic prosperity. Policies put in place during the height of COVID help people maintain access to Medicaid coverage, which combined with the ACA narrowed the gap in uninsured rates between white people and people of color. It is also important to remember that when more people are uninsured, we all pay the price. I mentioned Jackson is a public hospital. That means we take care of everyone regardless of their ability to pay. But when uncompensated care is provided, those costs just shift elsewhere, putting pressure on everyone's insurance premiums, hospital budgets, and state and federal government. The more people who lack insurance coverage, the higher those uncompensated care costs are. I want to end on a personal note. I am from the city of Hialeah in Florida, which also happens to be the second highest rate of ACA enrollments in the nation. I know what healthcare coverage means to my community and how being uninsured would hurt the financial stabilities of those families. There are too many families in our country who are still working toward being middle class, and too many families, middle class families, who are precariously middle class. Project 2025's attack on the ACA and Medicaid threaten our economic stability because we cannot grow the middle class without health care. We cannot build a great nation if its people are ill, and if every family is one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. Thank you.
Vicki, for the work that you do in the community, and more importantly, for sharing your story and putting in such beautiful words what this means to people every single day. There is no better way to honor the work of nurses and doctors across the country than to ensure every American has quality, affordable health care, period. Buried in Project 2025 is a not so secret plan to eliminate overtime pay. It's a generous gift to corporations and an insult to the American worker. Many working families, especially in my state of Michigan, but in many others across the heartland of America and the rest of the country, rely on overtime to make ends meet and to save for their future. In fact, we know that many workers take on jobs specifically because employers offer overtime. But under Trump's Project 2025, employers could force workers to work more than 40 hours a week without paying them time and a half. In other words, you work harder and you earn less. Workers deserve better. Workers like JJ Jewell. JJ is a United Auto Worker. He's from the UAW, but he works at the Ford Sterling Axle in Sterling Heights, Michigan. He and his fellow auto workers are the backbone of the American economy and have been so for decades. They keep our country moving. They deserve fair pay and strong workplace protections. They don't deserve a plan that takes away their overtime, undermines their rights at work, their safety, and raises their taxes. Today, JJ will explain the impact of this plan on workers like him. Thank you for being here. You are recognized.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Again, my name is JJ Jewell. I've been an hourly UAW worker for Ford Motor Company at the Ford Sterling Axle plant in Michigan for about 12 years now. For most of that time, I was a two-tier worker on the assembly line, making less than $24 an hour. But thanks to the new UAW contract from last fall, my pay increased to $38 an hour overnight. This contract has made a huge difference for me and my family, and I'm here today to share how dangerous it could be for workers like me if Project 2025 moves forward. Let me start by telling you what a typical work week can look like for an auto worker. When I was on the line, I would usually work Monday through Friday, starting my shift anywhere between 5 and 6 a.m., finishing around 1 or 2 p.m. When we are asked to do overtime, it often comes in the form of working 4 hours early, which means my 12-hour workday would start at 1 or 2 in the morning. For those extra 4 hours, we are paid at time and a half. I would usually work 12-hour work days, maybe 1 week out of the month, 2 if I'm lucky. That significant extra pay is often necessary for workers like me to make ends meet and to get forward. With straight time at the wage that I had for my first 10 years, my yearly earnings were around $50,000. When I would work a steady amount of overtime, that could go up to somewhere between maybe $55,000 and $65,000. In my best year, meaning the most hours put in, I made $72,000, but that came with a cost. The long hours, again, 1 and 2 a.m. starts, you can imagine the alarm for that, took a toll on my health. Still, that overtime pay was real money that I used to save for a down payment on a home, pay for big life milestones like a wedding, and do what I could to build a more secure future. Under Project 2025, however, my employer could manipulate my schedule in a way that would effectively eliminate my ability to earn overtime pay or to receive that time and a half. If they're able to calculate the overtime period over a longer number of weeks, they essentially destroy the standard work week, my ability to earn what I'm owed for working overtime. It's not just the loss of income that worries me. It's the fact that people could be working 60 or 70-hour work weeks without the extra compensation that we really count on. It's a double gut punch for workers like me, especially when you consider the physical and emotional toll of such long hours that we put in. The way I see it, Project 2025 is about putting more power in the hands of employers to exploit workers like me or like my mom. She's an hourly worker at Ford as well, neck and back surgeries and all. It depends on those overtime hours and compensation to not just get ahead, but stay where we need to be. Changing overtime rules gives them more control over our schedules and ultimately our paychecks. It's part of a larger goal to make corporations richer at the expense of the workers who actually keep the wheels turning, both figuratively and literally. If we allow workers to take away our ability to earn fair overtime pay, we're letting them strip away a key source of income for families like mine. This isn't just about me. It's about millions of American workers who deserve a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you, JJ, for sharing just what a serious financial hit families like yours would take from Trump's Project 2025's extreme plan to end overtime pay. I want to zero in on another way that Donald Trump's Project 2025 hurts the middle class. Not only would it lower your pay, but it would raise taxes on middle class families like yours, full stop. Experts have dug through Project 2025, but they didn't have to read between the lines too much to know exactly what Trump and MAGA Republicans want to do with your taxes, because it's practically written in boldface. They will raise your taxes while cutting taxes for billionaires and big corporations. Their plan to cut corporate taxes will give the Fortune 100 a ridiculous $24 billion with a B dollar handout. You don't need an MBA, you don't need to go to business school to know that corporate CEOs do not particularly need another $24 billion right now. But what does all this mean for you? They will raise taxes on the median family of four by $3,000 a year and by nearly $1,000 for a single person household. Let's take a look at a video to see what that means for your checking account.
Meet Joe and Jane Taxpayer. They live in Pittsburgh and have 2 kids. Their number one issue is the same as most Americans, the cost of living. So let's see how the Project 2025 agenda affects their bank account. Together, the taxpayers make $10,417 a month. So they currently pay $598 in monthly federal income taxes. But under Project 2025, it would be $864 a month. Now, let's pay the mortgage. It's currently $2,160 a month. But under Project 2025, it goes up $100 a month. And the taxpayers are still paying off their student loans. Well, under their current plan, they pay a combined $913 a month. Project 2025, on the other hand, would dramatically increase their combined payments to $1,563. Finally, health insurance. The taxpayers are 2 of more than 21.4 million people who get insurance through the Affordable Care Act. Their monthly family premium is currently $885 a month, but under Project 2025, it would cost $1,835 every single month. And get this, under Project 2025, Joe's salary of $55,840 a year would mean that he makes too much to qualify for overtime. Total extra costs, $1,966 a month, or a whopping $23,592 a year. That makes things a lot tougher for the taxpayers and for the American people.
Now, you may reasonably be asking, why do Trump and congressional Republicans want to raise taxes on hardworking families and hand out tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations? I'll tell you why. Because he doesn't care about you. He only cares about himself and his rich friends. I yield now to the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. Delora.
I thank my colleague and I thank our guests today. But extreme MAGA Republicans have no plan to take care of our teachers. As a matter of fact, their plan is to destroy our public schools, to eliminate public education from K 12 to higher education. And that means eliminating the opportunity for our kids to be able to dream their dreams, achieve their aspirations and their hopes. Trump's Project 2025 is a direct attack on teachers and public education. Written in their 922-page manifesto, which I have read cover to cover, is a plot to abolish the Department of Education, to end Head Start, a program that has served more than 40 million kids since its founding. But that's not all. Extreme MAGA Republicans will defund our schools by ending Title I funding for good. Implemented. Project 2025 will roll back protections for LGBTQI students. It will divert federal education resources to private school vouchers, privatize student loans, and end loan forgiveness. The end goal is the destruction of our public schools, making a quality education a privilege of the wealthy and the well connected rather than a right for every child in America. Trump's Project 2025 is just one terrible idea after another, and these extremists deserve a failing grade. You don't have to take this from me. Look at their proposed funding bills, which we are now considering. House Republicans wrote bills this year that follow Project 2025's lead by slashing investments in our children's education, which would be felt in every public classroom across this country. And please understand that this is not a wish list, it is a to do list. Joining us today is Rodney Fresh, a public school teacher in Detroit who teaches in a school where most of our students there qualify for free and reduced lunch. The harm Project 2025 will have for those kids is unimaginable. Rodney, thank you so much for being here. You are recognized.
Thank you, Representative Delora, for inviting me to testify today. My name is Rodney Fresh Jr. I'm a second generation teacher from Detroit, Michigan. I am proud to follow in the footsteps of my mother, who dedicated 34 years of her career to the Detroit Public Schools, the same district where I currently teach ninth grade U.S. history, 11th grade world history, and AP African American Studies. I come here today as a proud educator who believes strongly in public education and its value in a democratic society. And I come here today to warn against the impact that Project 2025 will have on our public schools and their children and our kids. At its core, Project 2025 is a well funded attempt to privatize public education and kick the ladder of opportunity from under those who need it the most. Most of the students I teach are on free and reduced lunch. They will need every bit of help so they can excel, but Project 2025 would take a critical support away. Consider Project 25 would abolish the Department of Education. For my students, that means taking away the extra resources needed to succeed. Project 2025 would eliminate Title I and IDEA funding. This would decimate as many as 180,000 teaching positions, one of which my mother classified under. It would cause class sizes to balloon and hurt students like mine. Finally, eliminating the IDEA funding would make it impossible to meet the needs of students with disabilities. Project 2025 would scrap Head Start. This would shut off access to high quality early childhood education for students in Detroit and across the nation. It would also take away a lifeline many parents depend on to give their kids a real opportunity and fair shot at overcoming poverty, one my wife benefited from. And Project 2025 would censor classes like the AP African American Study class I currently teach. Teaching our nation's true history and shared history is critical, and I take this responsibility seriously. This class helps our students better understand the role African Americans have played in shaping our nation and the many challenges they face in doing so. Taken together, Project 2025 represents something sinister, a deliberate and calculated strategy to undermine public education. Why do they want to weaken public schools? If you ask me, it's because they fear what public schools do. The teaching of critical thinking, honest history, and tolerance because diverse, educated citizens threaten their power. So they're going after educational opportunity, they're going after economic opportunities, and they're going after equal opportunity. This is not the promise of America. We can and must do better for the sake of our students. I felt compelled to step out of my classroom and come here today to warn you about what's at stake for our students and community. We cannot, and I repeat, we cannot allow Project 2025 to dismantle public education and destroy such an essential pillar of our democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Fresh, for your testimony. Project 2025 is 920 pages of crazy with deadly consequences. Let's recap what we've heard today. In the first panel, we heard from our witnesses about the devastating impact of Project 2025 on reproductive health care. In this panel, we heard that Project 2025 will eliminate the Affordable Care Act, Project 2025 will eliminate overtime pay, and Project 2025 will eliminate the Department of Education. I cannot think of a single middle class family or any family that will benefit from Project 2025. Trump's Project 2025 is extreme. It's going to result in higher costs, longer hours, and harm to our students. That's why we must do everything we can to stop Project 2025. And I just want to note that throughout this year and last year, House Republicans, through various pieces of bills that they've introduced and put on the floor, have tried to implement the ideas of Project 2025. And now I'd like to yield to the chairman of our House Democratic Caucus, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vice Chair Lou. For years, Republicans have threatened the livelihoods of our seniors with a single policy goal. They want to cut Social Security and Medicare. And while it may seem hard to believe that could ever happen, there were other extreme Republican policies that just a few years ago we didn't think could happen.
The fact that I was able to terminate Roe v. Wade after 50 years of trying, they worked for 50 years. I've never seen anything like it. They worked, and I was so honored to have done it. For 54 years, they were trying to get Roe v. Wade terminated, and I did it, and I'm proud to have done it. Especially since I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of something that all legal scholars, both sides, wanted and, in fact, demanded be ended. Roe v. Wade.
If Roe v. Wade can fall, anything can fall. Social Security can fall. Medicare can fall.
With Trump's Project 2025, they put in writing a roadmap to finally make this goal a reality. And it's our responsibility to put a spotlight on their real plans if they take over. And as Leader Jeffries said, if Roe can fall, anything can fall. We should expect, just like they did with Roe v. Wade, that they will cut Social Security and Medicare as soon as they can. The architects of Trump's Project 2025 made it clear that they want seniors to work longer for less by raising the retirement age. And that shouldn't be a surprise. The Republican Study Committee, to which a majority of House Republicans belong, released their own budget that mirrors what Project 2025's architects have written, raising the retirement age for workers nearing retirement. Social Security is more than just an earned benefit, it's a promise to the American people. We cannot, and House Democrats will not, break our word and allow this lifeline to be taken away from America's seniors. I want to yield to the gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici.
Aguilar, and thank you to my colleagues, but importantly, thank you to all the everyday Americans who are here today, highlighting the many dangers of Trump's Project 2025. Across the country, 67 million Americans rely on Social Security. But if the architects of Trump's Project 2025 get their way, extreme MAGA Republicans will end Social Security and Medicare as we know it. For most retirees, Social Security is their main source of income, and for many, it's their only income. Social Security benefits are modest, and for many retirees, they're not enough to cover the cost of living when you factor in housing, food, and medicine. President Biden, Vice President Harris, and House Democrats took action to lower drug prices and to stop Big Pharma from ripping off seniors. And so today I am pleased to welcome a retiree from Stafford County, Virginia, Genevieve Grinkley. Genevieve is a mother, a grandmother, and a great grandmother. She spent her career serving others, including helping fellow Virginians find jobs. And now she is a retiree who counts on Social Security and Medicare for a dignified retirement. Thank you for being here, Genevieve, and you are recognized.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation to testify today. My name is Genevieve Grinkley. I am a lifelong resident of Stafford County, Virginia, and the proud mother of 3 children, a grandmother of 9, and a great grandmother to another 10. I spent 43 years of my life working, paying taxes, and contributing to Social Security. The last 11 years of my career were spent working for a nonprofit organization in Virginia, helping seniors find jobs if they decided to rejoin the job market after their retirement. I retired 10 years ago at the age of 65. In retirement, Social Security has been my sole source of income. Even with the monthly checks, Social Security is not enough to make ends meet. And while I am grateful for Medicare, it doesn't cover all my health care costs, including the insulin I need as a diabetic. To take care of my expenses and have a little bit extra to treat my grandchildren, I continue to work cleaning homes in Stafford and nearby communities. Every dollar counts. When I recently had to replace the roof on my home, I had to stretch every dollar to make sure I could get that urgent repair done. I'm not sure what I would done if I didn't have Social Security and Medicare. Literally, the roof might have caved in. Without Social Security, I don't know where I would be. And it scares me that my friends, who are just a few years younger than I, could lose their benefits if politicians raise the retirement age or cut monthly payments. My fellow Americans and I worked hard for our Social Security, and we don't deserve to have politicians threaten to take those benefits away.
Miss Grinkley,
Yes.
hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. You mentioned that you take insulin. Can you tell us how much your insulin costs?
It is now cost about $35 a month. That is recent because Democrats passed a law that capped insulin prices at $35 a month. Before that, I paid as much as $400 for a 90-day supply.
Were you able to manage other expenses when insulin costs that much?
No, even with Social Security and the money I had made cleaning houses, I couldn't afford to pay all my bills and pay for insulin. I started taking smaller doses than I was prescribed to stretch the insulin as long as I could. And I ended up starting to have stomach pain. I went to my doctor and he sent me for a colonoscopy because I had been taking less insulin than I was supposed to, so I could make each 90-day supply last longer. I had developed a lot more problems. It took me more than a year to get the complications under control and be healthy again. And I can't imagine going back to having to make that choice between what I can afford and what I need to do to stay healthy.
Thank you so much, Genevieve, for sharing your story. And we absolutely agree with you that in a country as rich as ours, no one should have to choose between making ends meet and affording the medicine they need. As we just heard, Medicare is quite literally saving uh, a lifeline and saving our seniors. And the insulin price cap is saving Americans across this country thousands of dollars a year. But under Trump's Project 2025, Republicans would end Medicare as we know it. They would move seniors into expensive private plans and roll back benefits they've earned. And they would take away prescription drug cost savings House Democrats delivered, allowing drug companies to charge people like Genevieve whatever they want. For seniors like Genevieve and tens of millions more, that will mean worse care and going back to the days of rationing insulin. Our seniors deserve better than that. We cannot allow Trump's Project 2025 to become a reality. I want to yield to my colleague from Michigan, Mr. Kildee.
Thank you, Chair Aguilar. Today, we've heard stories of hardworking American taxpayers who will face the consequences of Trump's Project 2025. Some are facing those consequences already. Because of the actions of extreme MAGA Republicans over the last 2 years, some of our witnesses, like Gracie and Suki, are shouldering unthinkable burdens because of those extreme policies. And as Vicki told us, tens of millions of Americans, patients that she cares for, people in your lives, mothers, fathers, children, will lose their health care. As Michigan's own JJ explained, workers will be forced to work more than 40 hours a week without getting time and a half or any overtime pay whatsoever. And as Detroit's own Rodney explained, the consequences for public schools will be fewer teachers, bigger class sizes, less opportunity. And as Genevieve just shared, Social Security benefits will go down and drug prices will go up. It will also inflict unimaginable cruelty against immigrants. It will provide a license to discriminate against LGBTQ plus Americans. It will reverse all the progress we've made to take on the climate crisis. And Trump and the architects of this plan aren't ashamed of it. They posted it online for all of us to see. 900 plus pages. Under Donald Trump and House Republicans, you'll have less money, you'll have less freedom. Trump's Project 2025 takes America and all Americans backwards. MAGA Republicans wear this as a badge of honor. They're proud of it. They want to take us back to a time in our country when far too many people were left behind, left out in the cold, left to fend for themselves in the face of illness or of tragedy. But we don't have to go back. House Democrats have a vision to put people over politics, lowering costs, growing the middle class, defending freedom. Our country has begun feeling the consequences of the Trump administration, as one promise that he did keep was overturning Roe. So as we close today, we want to offer a picture of what a second Trump term would look like. Project 2025 in hand and above the law, thanks to the extreme hand-picked justices on the Supreme Court.
You are promising America tonight you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
If I happen to be president and I see somebody who's doing well and beating me very badly, I say, go down and indict them. Mostly what that would be, you know, they would be out of business. They'd be out. They'd be out of the election.
Are we close to seeing Mr. Kim here at the White House?
Could happen. I mean,
they talked about that yesterday.
I would have to, yeah, I think it's something that could happen. Yeah. Hey, he's the head of a country, and I mean, he is the strong head. Don't let anyone think anything different. Right. He speaks and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same.
In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Together, we must reject Trump's Project 2025 and forge a new and better way forward. This meeting of the Steering and Policy Committee is adjourned.